Please hold it a little bit longer. Take your sweet time. How's it dry over there? It's so quiet.
If I drink this, I could go through the video faster. I am a huge video game aficionado, but recently I've turned my attention away from video games and onto tabletop gaming, and part of the reason for this is that I found that modern gaming has actually caught up with video games in offering complexity to players, offering good narratives to players, even having cooperative play, which is something that I did not see in many games growing up. So I recently picked up Room 25, which is a game where you are thrown into a prison with a bunch of other random people, and you're trying to escape, trying to find Room 25, which is the exit. And apparently while you're doing this, there's an audience watching you on television, laughing at your peril. Pretty good premise, pretty engaging. I played it a few times with friends, they liked it. But when I looked at the manual, there's a little thing on the manual that says where the inspiration for this game came from, and 3 sci-fi movies are mentioned. One of them is The Running Man, which is a great movie. Tron, pretty good movie. And then Cube. I've never seen Cube, so after I played it for the first time, I picked up a copy of Cube and watched it. And I'm glad I did. It's been 18 years since it came out, and I'm glad I had an incentive to watch it. I mean, if this movie is old enough now, if it were a human baby, it'll be in university. So I'm glad that it got a fair viewing for me at least, and I hope if you haven't seen it, you check it out as well. The premise is pretty much similar to Room 25 in that you have to escape, but it's not televised. Actually, you have no idea why the characters are thrown into this situation. They're just in these confined cube-like rooms and trying to figure out which rooms attached to the walls or the ceiling or the floor are safe to traverse. I love this premise. Some of my favorite movies deal with confined spaces. Night of Living Dead, 1968 version especially, does this really well. You realize that the zombies outside of that house in Pennsylvania are not the enemy. It's the people you're actually trying to survive with that could be your biggest enemy. Another movie would be Lifeboat, which deals with, it's an Alfred Hitchcock movie where a cruise ship is sunk, but these people are on a boat together. They're very different social economic backgrounds, but they have to learn how to survive together. I even love this premise in video games. 4 of my favorite video games deal very nicely with this premise, and I wouldn't be surprised if Cube in some way inspired these games, especially the creme de la creme might be 999, 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 rooms. Very interesting, similar dynamic, survive with a bunch of people you never met before, and the sequel, Virtual's Last Reward. Not exactly as good, but also quite quality, would be the Danganronpa series. If you have not checked it out, please go check out these games. So this again is a premise that I've already loved, and I'm glad that I saw this movie because it deals with that human element, people arguing, people actually getting into somewhat even political arguments. I mean, you're trying to survive. This is no place to argue politics. There's a baby crying outside. Sorry about that. Wow, that's the cry of existential crisis. Do you hear that? All right, let me stop the video here. All right, so the baby is upstairs now and everything's cool, and I got my coffee so I could talk even faster. So where was I? Let's just start from the beginning. I think that's a good place to start with anything. The first thing you see is an eye opening. And this is kind of a cliche way to start a movie or a TV series because we've seen it a bunch of times, but I like this cliche. This cliche works. Sometimes a cliche is a cliche for a good reason, as I said before. And the reason why I like this is because when an eye opens, the pupil has to adjust to a new lighting situation. So what you immediately establish without using words is disorientation. Remember the first scene of Lost, the ABC Sci-Fi show, where Matthew Fox's character wakes up in the jungle and his eye is slowly, or quickly actually, adjusting to the lighting of the jungle. Same thing here. We see somebody who doesn't clearly know where he or she is. Now I say she because the first eye we see is blue, and I noticed this the second time I watched the movie, but the character we follow right after we see that image has brown eyes. So I'm not sure if that was a conscious decision by the director to have it open on a blue eye, because I think the only character with a blue eye, or two for that matter, is Nicole DeBoer's character, Levin. Nicole DeBoer, you might remember from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. She was in the last 2 seasons. Anyway, so you open up with that eye. It's a good image, and then you have the first victim of the traps that are set in these various cubes, and then we have the word cube show up on the screen, and then there are no credits. And I love this about a movie. I love a movie that doesn't do credits. I wish more movies would do this. I guess the reason why they don't is because the Screen Actors Guild would have an issue with it. I know there was a controversy back in the 70s when George Lucas didn't want to have opening credits in Star Wars, but I love that because, you know, you don't want to be taken out of this fictional world by you know, just slamming names of real people on the screen. It doesn't say introducing Mark Hamill and, you know, guest starring Obi-Wan Kenobi or Alec Guinness. It doesn't do that stuff. And the same thing with Cube. You're immediately immersed in this world, and you're immersed in a world that costs very little money to make. It's a Canadian film, I believe, and they were on a shoestring budget, and they had really just one set. It's just one room that they keep recycling, pretending it's other rooms. So if you have no money, you could still make a high-quality sci-fi film, and that's really something to applaud in this movie. I was really surprised when I watched the trailer. I'm thinking, how could you turn one set into an interesting trailer that would get people into the theater seats? But they actually pull it off by doing, you know, different camera angles, doing some fisheye effects. There's some handheld camera effects in the movie. So the cinematography is a compelling force in this movie. You know, it's not amazing. It's not. You know, we're not talking about who's a good cinematographer. I'm showing my ignorance here. It's not a Wes Anderson film, but it's good enough. So again, it's that premise that people are trying to. Oh, I'm losing battery. All right, I better make this quickly. People are trying to survive with each other, and it lends itself to actually some really good existential possibilities. Why are they here? You could even, if you have the inclination, you could even like bring in, you know, some Camus or Sartre into the discussion to talk about the absurdity of their situation. One of the characters says, you know, you've got to learn how to live with yourselves. You have to save yourselves from yourselves. So you can get to some like Natures of Man kind of conversations based on this movie. And there are some hints about why this cube was created or who's behind it, but there's really no definitive answer. And I love that about this movie. It doesn't give you everything you want, but you still like it. Now I understand there are sequels. There's Cube 2 and there's Cube 0. I don't want to know. I don't want to know anything about the cube. I want this movie to exist in isolation by itself. And I think the creators of this movie kind of divorced themselves from the sequel and the prequel, which is Cube 0. Some things are better left unknown. I don't want to see Boba Fett as a child. I don't want to see the cube being built by some, you know, mega corporate conglomeration. I just want to see people interact in this situation. What else? People say that the acting is questionable in this movie. It's serviceable. There are some eyebrow-raising moments in the acting, some weird decisions the actors make, but this movie's premise survives those questionable acting moments. I'm not going to say it's bad acting, but there are some moments where, especially the actor who plays Quentin, I'm like, why are you doing this? Why are you looking so suspicious right now when there's really no need for you to be sneering at the camera? So yeah. Check out Cube if you haven't seen it already, and if you don't like these types of movies, because maybe there's a little bit of a gore element, it's not Saw, but it's got like Saw type stuff in it, then just check out the board game. This board game is not that violent unless you play with an angry person. This is Room 25 Season 2. I recommend you check this out too. So if anything, if this is not a movie recommendation, at least it's a game recommendation. Check it out. It's fun. Battery's dead.